Welcome everyone, Costini here with the discussion about the worst Legendary Lords for every single race in the game. For Skaven is Tretch Craventail, by far. I've played this campaign, I stand by that perspective. While certainly you can make it work, because Skaven are a powerful race, and Tretch does start with a pretty powerful landmark over here that gives you a lot of income, food, tradable resources, etc. He still is pretty damn awful. Faction-wide effects, he gets an improved Scurry Away, so you're just getting 10% damage resistance when your unit's leadership is breaking. Yeah, that's really useful. You get Encourage for Storm Vermin, which is going to provide leadership benefits to units around them. Okay, so a couple of Storm Vermin, especially because you get better Storm Vermin, is going to be worth it, but you can't really afford to mass Storm Vermin because they're really expensive as units. Like a regular Storm Vermin with Sword and Shield is 260 free upkeep, if we're looking at the situation. The Halberds are a bit cheaper, but still, very, very expensive units that aren't that great in combat. There are much better units available to the Skaven in their campaigns. Some people are gonna dislike it, but you know what? I think those people don't know what the heck they're talking about. And those units are the Night Runners, the Gut Runners with poison. Do you know why? They're better in melee, they do a lot of range damage, they win battles on their own. If you're playing a Skaven campaign right now and you're not recruiting Night Runners and then Gut Runners, you're not properly playing Skaven at the moment. Doesn't matter which Legendary Lord you're talking about. Snitch is better with them because he gets armor piercing, but all Skaven Legendary Lords should use them. Then he gets the following bonuses that he's pretty much going to have non-stop in his campaign. The reason to explain why he's going to have non-stop is, okay, you declare war on a faction and you get the surprise attack benefit. Alright, doesn't sound too bad, but let's say I go to these guys and declare war on the Dripping Fangs. Suddenly, that benefit has increased to 6 turns. So it's a faction-wide benefit where the duration is increased every time you declare war. Like, in one campaign, in my campaign as Tretch, I think I had like 20 turns, 30 turns of surprise attack. So this is your real faction benefit, not the crap with Storm Vermin or the Scurry Away. No, it's the fact that while you obviously have to declare war from time to time to keep it going, you're getting an ambush success chance of 25%, Vanguard deployment for all units, battle reinforcement time, and ability uses for Menace Below. The Menace Below ability uses doesn't really matter all that much, I'd argue. The enemy battle reinforcement time, okay, can be a bit useful to help you deal damage to an enemy before the reinforcements arrive. The ambush success chance is actually fairly significant as a benefit because all Skaven have the stock chance. So this will allow you to ambush them. And Vanguard deployment for all units, well, there's already a lot of Skaven units that have Vanguard deployment. So out of the benefits you're getting here, I would say the battle reinforcement time can sometimes be useful. The ambush success chance is always useful. And Menace Below, yeah, just doesn't really matter. Now, with regards to Tretch's Lord effects and skill lines, he gets melee attack during ambushes, melee attack after retreating when attacked, and Devastating Flanker. Devastating Flanker is okay, but the thing is Skaven units, with exception like the big monsters, just don't really have that much charge effect. While you certainly can make use of that, especially because you get 10 charge bonus for Storm Vermin, you get Tretch's Raiders, you get a further ambush success and defense chance, campaign movement range after winning a battle, speed for clan rats, and missile resistance for clan rats and storm vermin, and as well as just using the ability of Stay Here, I'll Get Help, which is a great leadership ability, and then casualty replenishment. But really, Tretch is the weakest of the Legendary Lords because his faction-wide effects are they're not comparable to what the other Legendary Lords get. You look at Snitch, you look at Ikeclaw, you look at Fraught, hell, you look at Queek and Skrulk. Yes, Queek and Skrulk are much better Legendary Lords. Like, Queek himself would devastate Tretch in a one-on-one fight. That's just what it really boils down to. And Queek has a much easier starting position, let's not ignore that. You get to deal with Drazov and his nuclear weapon from the very beginning of a campaign, because that's what the Mega Mortar is. It's like dealing with an unlimited number of nuclear weapons in a campaign. So every time you fight any one of Drazov's armies, he's gonna use that Mega Mortar against you. Compare that to Queek, who is actually the most comparable Legendary Lord to Tretch. Queek has a much easier starting situation over here, that he wipes out the Red Fangs. He'll get a lot of chieftains in his campaign very, very early on. He has, obviously, loyalty benefits for lords. And he'll take 2 entire provinces that are very, very easy to defend. And then he'll march and take Karak-Azul, maybe Black Crag, and just then descend on the... Or ignore Black Crag even, just take Karak Peaks and then march on Emmerich, deal with that, and deal with everything over here. And Queek will end up carving out an empire that's much larger, much more powerful, much easier than anything Tretch can do. You can certainly make a campaign as Tretch work, because he's still a Skaven Legendary Lord, and Skaven are a powerful race at the moment, but he is by far, in a way, the worst Legendary Lord of the Skaven. For the Tomb Kings, it is Grand, Hierophant, Khatep. Now this is a weird one, because Khatep is not a bad Legendary Lord. In fact, he is quite very strong. He's got good faction effects over here. He gets 2 hero capacity for Lich Priest, rank cost minus 25%, mortuary cult crafting cost minus 25%, which is pretty useful in point of fact when you were looking at the mortuary cult and trying to get things out of it. That's great. And when we're looking at his Lord effects, he gets character experience gain for heroes in Lord's army and 10% campaign movement range. He gets benefits to Shabti, which is always great to have. He gets Reanimator, which gives leadership for a bunch of units like Nehekara Warriors, Skeleton Warriors, Spearmen, Archers, and Tomb Guard. He gets the Sandstorm ability from the start, and he can upgrade it even further. It's not necessarily the best ability in the world, but it is pretty useful as well. He buffs cavalry units. He gives you casualty replenishment and Tomb Guard unit capacity. So casualty replenishment for Tomb Guard and unit capacity for them. He gets a further Lich Priest hero capacity and recruit rank. And then he gets a Winds of Magic Power Reserve chance. He also has an artillery piece as a mount. Now it is a pretty high level to get it, but damn, when you get that particular mount, it's like you just won the campaign there, more or less. And you also get another hero capacity for a Lich Priest. Like, that's 4 hero capacity for a Lich Priest that he just basically has by default. 1 Canopic Jar and hero recruitment for them in all provinces. That's a bit of a weird one, I gotta say. Because you don't need a structure to recruit Lich Priests. Unless I'm very mistaken on that subject. So it feels a bit weird. I think you can recruit heroes in any province as a Tomb King, so it is a bit weird one to have that. But he does get construction cost in a local province, research benefit, the Lich Staff. He's pretty good. He also has a pretty good starting province over here in the Red Desert. 4 regions, pretty good situation. Not many foes necessarily. I mean, Grombrundle is the major exception, but you can wipe him out easily because his army is not going to be here at the Tranquil Spire. You go here, you take out his unit recruitment, you take out the Elder Spire, and then you sell the territory to Malekith. The problem is, in this campaign, it is a major issue. The reason Khatep is the worst, by far, by a very significant amount, and there's no conversation on this, is in order to win the campaign, you have to do 2 things that are really, really stupid. First off, you have to waste a lot of your Canopic Jars, your precious Canopic Jars, which you want to save for army capacity and hero capacity. You have to waste them on getting these freaking legions, which are worthless. Many of them are worthless. I mean, the only one would be the Venom Knights, but the other 3, well, maybe the Legion of the Netherworld, but not really. The legions are for the most part useless, but in order to get them, you need to, and this is really the annoying part, you need to get these trade resources. So you need to get gold, which the closest gold mine is in Hexoatl. Enjoy going up against Mazdamundi in this situation. So you need to get gold, you need to get iron. Okay, let's say you get iron, you can get iron pretty quickly. But imagine that the best case scenario would be for you to end up having to go against Morathi and Hexoatl at the same time in your early campaign, just to unlock the legions from the mortuary cult. And the best part about this is most of the territory that Morathi has, I mean, yes, you could probably rush for Iron Spike if you so desire. It would, in fact, maybe that's the best thing you could do in this campaign. Just ignore the greenskins here and just rush south to get these resources before Morathi does. But you're likely going to fail in that respect, and there's not necessarily a whole lot of iron. Well, there is some in the Venom Glade, if you want to go for that. Well, not in the Venom Glade, in Hotek's column. Enjoy going against Illustra just to get a resource for the sake of a campaign victory condition. That isn't a fun experience. Far worse is what you need to do in order to achieve your long campaign victory condition. Now, short campaign, okay, let's say it's not a big priority, because casualty replenishment, while it's nice, it's not too important necessarily for the Tomb Kings, especially because your Lich Priests, all the lovely Lich Priests that you will get, and should get, are going to give you casualty replenishment. Okay, but long campaign victory condition, you have to basically take over all of Khemri. Now, even getting to Khemri is an absolute pain, because it's really far away from your starting position. But even when you get there, you're gonna end up having to fight Cetra. And Khatep fighting Cetra is just so silly and ridiculous from a lore perspective that makes this entire campaign a complete and utter joke of a campaign to deal with. What's even worse, believe it or not, is a lot of the books of Nagash. This is what I mean. You have to fight both Morathi and Hexoatl. Two of the books of Nagash, one is in Morathi's capital, the other is in Mazdamundi's capital. So enjoy dealing with that. There are some rogue armies. There's one in Bretonia, if you want to deal with that. There's one in Wolf 1. Oh yes, I do enjoy invading Wolf 1 and picking a fight with both Tyrion and Ilariel on legendary difficulty. That is a really fun experience. I mean, there's some good books of Nagash, but you gotta understand, a lot of the books of Nagash that Khatep wants are in the north, whereas you are trying to head southeast. So enjoy having contradictory campaign objectives, because you don't want to get the books of Nagash, at least some of them, but at the same time you also want to go back to Khemri to win the campaign. You don't want every book of Nagash. There's some that are important, like the 4th book can be pretty useful. Shadows, so the 6th book can be pretty useful. The most important one is the 5th book of Nagash, though in this case it's spawned way over here to the north. Though it is within reach. But still, pretty annoying to have to deal with all of that. So this is a prime example of how you can have a good Legendary Lord, good faction effects, good Lord effects, a good race even. The Tomb Kings are a pretty good race. Limited armies initially notwithstanding. But you can have everything that you might imagine, but the campaign is still awful just because of where you start, climate suitability, and the objectives of the campaign. For the Vampire Coast, it is Luthor Harkon. The problem in Luthor Harkon's campaign is he lacks the flexibility that the other Legendary Lords for the Vampire Coast have. And that is the biggest issue, because the Vampire Coast is not really a race that's designed to hold a lot of territory, at least not inland. They can hold a lot of ports and gain a lot of income from that, but they're really about moving around the campaign map, setting up pirate coves, getting hero capacity through that, and income through that, as opposed to holding a lot of territory. If you're playing Luthor Harkon, you are going to have to hold a lot of territory inland, because you're going to have to deal with the Lizardmen factions over here, especially Gorak, but not just Gorak, the Cult of Sotek as well, potentially Alberic and the Hunts Marshal as well in this campaign, in order to secure your starting situation. Or you're going to have a lot of armies showing up over here for the Awakening in the Jungle of Webs. See, the problem in Luthor's campaign is that in order to achieve campaign victory, you need to restore his mind. But to restore his mind, you need to first get to tier 3 and get the Collapsed Cavern, and then you need to get to tier 5 and get the Ancient Vault. Just a bit of advice, don't build the Collapsed Cavern until you've gotten to tier 5 so you can get the Ancient Vault. And this obviously will severely limit his campaign potential. He gets a diplomatic relations benefit with the followers of Nagash, but that's actually kind of a pointless benefit because you might want to take this province for yourself in the Land of Assassins because it's a pretty good province for the Vampire Coast. And then, hey, you can go after Aranessa for the wonderful settlement that is Sartosa, and then move over here for the Galleon's Graveyard. But you're going to have a serious issue on your hands dealing with all the lizardmen who will be coming for you. That's the first and biggest problem. On top of that faction-wide effect, you do get 6 melee defense for lords and embedded heroes. It's not bad, but it's not exceptional either. Then for Luthor himself, you get a different personality depending on who's in charge at that particular point. So you start with the Mad, you get melee attack and weapon strength, but you also have the downside of Rampage. You do get Vampiric Corruption, leadership when fighting lizardmen, and spell resistance in his army, which is pretty okay. You do get Frenzy, you get Man of War for extra hero capacity for Vampire Fleet Captains and Hero Recruit rank, leadership for Deckhands and Depth Guard. The Depth Guard benefit is the one that's worth it. Spell Resistance, Hand Cannon, which gives you explosive bullets, Missile Strength, and Missile Strength for Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mobs and Rotting Promethean Gunnery Mob units, Armor Melee Defense, and minus 10% upkeep with a global recruitment capacity, and you can also get the Terrorgeist as a mount. And you only have one item, which is pretty unfortunate, all things considered. So Luthor is supposed to be the generic Legendary Lord of the Vampire Coast, and the thing about the other Legendary Lords, Aranessa, Noctilus, Sinnelleos, is they have something unique to them. Aranessa is the best Legendary Lord for Vampire Coast, something a lot of people don't understand, because she gets unique units that make up for a lot of the issues that make up for a lot of the issues that the Vampire Coast usually has, especially in the early game, because she gets the Sartosa Free Company, which are like hobgoblins for the cast dwarves, and so they're pretty good. She also gets Man-Eaters much later on in her campaign, or not much later on at tier 3, once she gets to tier 3 port. And you don't have problems with growth as the Vampire Coast, so you can actually get to tier 3. Affording the Man-Eaters, that's a different discussion, but Aranessa is going to roll in money because she gets a sacking benefit. See, this is the thing about what makes a Legendary Lord good. It's not about their own combat potential, it's about buffing their faction, especially in Warhammer 3. In Warhammer 2, yes, having a Legendary Lord that had a really powerful army could work very well, but in Warhammer 2, we had much more limited armies. In Warhammer 3, it's all about getting as many armies that are as good and cost-effective as possible. That's what Aranessa provides in her campaign. That's why she's the best in my books. I know a lot of people disagree, but I've played quite a lot of the Vampire Coast in Warhammer 3. In fact, the Vampire Coast were the first faction that I completed the Legendary campaign for, or a campaign in general, because I only play on Legendary. The first faction, the first race that I completed a campaign for on the highest difficulty. And I did it in Noctilus, and it was a miserable experience because it's difficult to maintain good relations with Ulthuan. Now, Noctilus, of course, has his own benefit in that he has the Galleon Graveyard and the flexibility in his campaign. Sinnelleos starts with the Damned Paladin and can summon quite some pretty powerful knight units in battle, and she has a faction-wide upkeep benefit for the few units that you may want to recruit as the Vampire Coast, the Mongols. Luthor is generic in that he's not supposed to be specialized in any particular playstyle, and as a result of that, he suffers because the Vampire Coast roster is pretty weak. Like, overall, you do have good artillery, you do have good heroes, you do have good lore choices, but most of the unit roster is pretty weak. There are some exceptions, like you can make it work with Mongols, you can obviously get Depth Guard. I'm using a mod, so that's why Man-Eaters are showing up here in the ports, by the way. They, by default, don't show up, but for whatever reason, the Warband upgrade system makes them show up. I think that's the issue. But you can make it work with Mongols to a certain extent, but even they are not necessarily that great. And the good units like Depth Guard, Rotting Prometheans, Necrophexes, and Necrophexes are not a great tier 5 unit. But even those those good units for the race, they're very expensive to maintain. And since you're playing with the economy on land, and the land economy for the Vampire Coast is not great, you're going to suffer quite a lot as a result of that. Though funnily enough, you might actually be able to generate more money than Kislev, at least early on in a campaign. That's how bad Kislev is. And that's all there is to it. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. Yes, no discussion on the ogres, because the ogres are not even worth talking about.